So, who in the world is Brian Stacy? You probably want to know. Brian knows who he is, but in case you don't know it, but he's a county engineer for Pierce County in Washington State. He's also the president of the National Association of County Engineers now. I think that's either a 1 or 2 year term, 1 year term. And of course, he's a professional engineer. And nobody from Washington State is here is able to answer this trivia question. Okay, otherwise you probably know what it is. Anybody know what Pierce County, Washington is noted for? Anybody in here play golf every now and then? Did you ever hear of the US Open golf tournament? It was at Chambers Bay in Washington State, which is owned by the Pierce County Public Works Department. A little trivia for you. At any rate, Brian's not going to talk about that, as you'll see from the agenda, so please welcome Brian Stacy.
Thank you, Jim, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me here. It's a real privilege to be able to say a few words here today. What I'm tasked with is, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about NACE. In fact, before I do that, can I, with a show of hands, how many people in here are familiar with the National Association of County Engineers? So, third to a half, maybe? Okay, so I'm going to blow through those slides reasonably quick, but I want to talk a little bit about the association that I represent, and I know that I've got quite a few counterparts out here in the audience that are either past or current NACE members that are familiar with it, but I'd like to share with the rest of you what that's all about. And then I'll step into the asset management side of things from a local perspective. And to do that best, I'm very fortunate. I've got a larger county, and I've got a really robust road operations division, and they're quite good at doing a lot of the pavement preservation and other things. They were able to provide me with a lot of good insights that I think I can share with you. And again, it's not necessarily to replicate what we're doing, but to provide, well, I think first of all, it's going to reinforce some of the stuff you've already heard today, which has been a really strong presentations up to this point in time, but just give you another sense for how people go about managing their road system. So with that, so what is NACE? We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan professional association. We've got about 1,900 members, been around since 1956. We've got, the county engineers are responsible for about 1.74 million miles of roadway. In addition to that, we've got 231,000 bridges and responsible for about a third of the nation's transit system. So one of the things we wrestle with at times within this organization is to make sure, as a result of our name, National Association of County Engineers, that folks understand that we're a very diverse association. There's an awful lot that goes in this association that isn't engineer-based. And you'll see here on this slide several different, well, actually quite a few road titles for the folks that are part of our organization. I won't go through those, but I think this will be of interest to some of the corporate folks that are in the audience. As we heard earlier, we've got a fairly diverse group of people in this building. We like to frame what we consider to be our annual buying power of our NACE members, and I consider that to be fairly significant. As you see, our total transportation budget is in the $11.2 billion range, with a B. Part of that is, as you can imagine, road construction is about 3.5 of that. Road maintenance is about the same. We got equipment purchasing at about $772 million, and almost the same is the repair and maintenance on that equipment. And then you'll see about $195 million in signage and traffic control. And then we'll spend about $250 million a year on engineering consultants. And our equipment fleet runs in about the 350,000 range for equipment. So it's a significant impact on all the things that we've heard today so far that need to be done in order to be able to keep the nation's infrastructure running well. The purpose of this slide is to give you a little idea of what the breakdown is within the organization. This happens to be a picture of the executive committee being sworn in earlier this year in Tacoma. We were fortunate enough in Tacoma to host the annual conference. I'm going to talk a little bit more about conferences in a few slides down, but in Tacoma, as Jim indicated, the home of the 2015 US Open in our county, We brought in a new slate of officers, and it's a 9-person group. So you've got an immediate past president, a president-elect, a secretary-treasurer, and then we've got 5 regional VPs within that group. This is just a shot of a typical board meeting. Take-home message here is these are what I would term our state directors. We've got 31 state affiliates within our organization. NACE, those affiliate states are each responsible for providing a state director that represents their state. So what you're seeing here is just a typical board meeting that we'll have. We have several a year by virtue of what our bylaws require us to do, and those are state directors sitting up at the table and hashing through the issues for NACE. I'd mentioned before we've got 5 regional vice presidents. You can see in the green we've got a western region, we've got a north central, a south central, a northeast, and then a southeast, and they're representing those states that are in the green, 31 of them in total. So conferences, I mentioned that we hosted Tacoma here earlier this year. Each year we have an annual conference. It's typically in the April timeframe. We also try to have a fall conference that we prefer to merge with some other regional conferences going on. Hopefully, even better yet is if it bounces us around the country to get a little bit more space between where our members were at the annual conference and where maybe they can be in the fall. We look at delivering best practices, latest technologies. Within that setting, we've got general sessions, we've got technical sessions. We try to bring back information that's going to allow the local agencies to be able to better represent what's going on a national basis for their counties. And then, of course, like many conferences, we've got a great exhibit show with all the latest and greatest technology out there. Everything from large equipment, software vendors, maybe it's AutoCAD, to signal timing. There's just all kinds of a myriad of things that are shown there. This is just a shot of some of our conference scenes here. So what do we do beyond that? We've talked a little bit about the makeup of NACE. There's really 3 things that we do primarily. 1 is to network. 2 is to advocate, and then lastly is to provide professional development opportunities for our members. So the advocacy, what that looks like really is, in fact, I haven't mentioned yet, we are a subsidiary essentially of our parent organization, which is NACO, the National Association of County Officials. In that role, we work collaboratively with NACO to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of the various legislative priorities that we have. And then we take that information, in particular, if it happens to be an engineering type of a discussion, or even better yet, a transportation specific, and we are going to act as our elected leaders' consultant essentially in that role. And there are times that we'll testify before Congress. There's times that we may have a particular person or two who's very adept at having conversations on a particular topic, so we may fly that person in to have a legislative discussion with Congress or somebody of significance that we need to work through. And then there are many times in terms of the networking where we reach out to our members to share information on things that are a challenge for us, and likely there's some other county or multiple counties out there that are struggling with the same things. So that's what our advocacy looks like. We do have a website. I got to tell you, the NACE acronym is used significantly for lots of other organizations, so I'll show you the web address when we get through there. If you were to just Google NACE, just so you know, there's a handful of other things that would come up other than just our organization. This website is actually, we just brought in a consultant. I think the contract's going to be signed this month, and this website, which is in need of updating, is going to be updated here in the next few months. So, some of our priorities, legislative priorities, I should say. Of course, the elephant in the room is always funding. We've heard that already today. Funding is a challenge for all of our members. Streamlining, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a second. And then lastly, safety. We promote safety at everything we do. I was encouraged to hear earlier by the speakers that when they look at their projects, they try to build in lots of other components, kind of the complete streets theme, if you would consider. And in terms of having safety, everything we do within our organization, we try to impose a safety component to that. We've already talked a little bit about this. The FAST Act, Fixing American Surface Transportation Act, as mentioned earlier, signed in December of 2015. It's about a 5-year, $305 billion act. As we summarize it from our local lens, we see some modest increases in funding for the locals, increase in sub-allocations to locals. We were able to maintain off-system bridge set aside, which was really important to a lot of our members. And then, as Butch mentioned earlier, more transparency on where the funds are spent. And I think that's a great thing. I'm going to talk more when I get into my local presentation on asset management, how critical that type of thing is in the big picture. Streamlining, we're still working hard to expand MAP 21 reforms, and I'm going to leave it at that. What I would suggest to you is our projects, the paper trail and the process itself is significant when you impose federal dollars on some of your projects. And for those of you out there that have done that, you know what I'm talking about. What I would suggest to you is we need to work with our state and federal partners to find ways to streamline that. I know that NACE is working hard and have provided many examples of how we believe that can happen. Again, without minimizing what the critical nature of the project is or putting environmental components at risk, nothing like that. It's just, are there places within the existing process that we can cut time value, money being what it is. If we can save time, we can save money. So that's an important aspect for us. We're going to continue to work on that. Safety, breaking that out a little bit. What we've seen here, for those that don't know, it's a slight graduated scale going up from 2016 up to 2020. You'll see it approximates between 2.45 billion up to about 2.66 billion dollars. Some of the things that we see as a struggle for us, it doesn't fix the high-risk rural roads, limits the use of HSIP funds. And this is kind of something not a lot of people maybe would be familiar with, but it gives the states a way out, essentially, from collecting unpaved road data, which then prevents using HSIP on those roads. So there's some things in here we see as challenges that we're going to continue to work on as we move this thing forward. I had mentioned our upcoming conference, or I should say our previous conference in Tacoma. The upcoming one is Cincinnati, Ohio. You can see the dates there. It's in 2017 in April. Would love to have some folks join us there. If you're able to pull that off in your schedule, it'll be a great time. And then lastly, on the NACE thing, one thing I didn't mention to give you a sense of the size of the organization is very much member driven. We're a really small organization. There's 3 people that work for NACE in DC, and one of them is the executive director, Brian Roberts, and then he's got 2 staff person working for him. So it's a small group. That's why they rely heavily on the county engineers to bring a lot of the muscle and the heavy lifting to the table. It's a good group to work with. You can see the contact information there, and also the website I had mentioned before. So let me jump into asset management. That's why we're all here. I kind of feel like to a certain extent I'm preaching to the choir, which is a good thing. Everybody in here seems to embrace the whole idea of preventative maintenance, asset management, that type of stuff. As I said when I started, I'm going to use the information based out of my home county. I'm most familiar with that, and I think it's a good model to be able to drive home some of the more key issues of that. One thing you're going to hear me say a lot, and this is the mantra from our maintenance group as well, is everything we do is based on lowest life cycle costs. Okay, I'm focusing obviously here on pavement maintenance and preservation, but that mantra is something that we live by wholeheartedly within our county. So real quick, what's Pierce County look like? We've got about 830,000 residents. We've got 24 cities and towns within our unincorporated limits. The largest one, for those that know the area, is City of Tacoma. That's about 205,000 people there, so that's the largest city within our county. We've got about 1,700 square miles from an area called Key Peninsula. An awful lot of peninsulas in there. There's a lot of salt water that surrounds our county, all the way up to Mount Rainier. Okay, so we're sitting at sea level all the way up to about 14,400 feet. Our county is comprised of urban, suburban, and rural areas. And we've got about 3,200 lane miles of pavement to take care of. So that'll give you a quick snapshot of what the county looks like. So replacement modeling. Many people have seen either this curve or something very similar to this curve, this typical pavement life curve. The pavement condition index, is on the y-axis, going vertical there. And then you've got the years down below on the x-axis. The one thing that's somewhat new to this is if you look at that, we've got the bituminous pavements listed on its own separate terms, as well as the asphalt pavements on its own separate. Certainly you want to operate within the, you want to operate within that green zone. That's where we're considering ourselves fully operational. We're doing preservation, we're doing maintenance. As the road starts to age, and I'm going to go into detail specifically with our roads here in the next few slides, but that's where you're looking at chip seal, thin overlays. It could be a thick overlay, those types of things to keep the pavement from bouncing into the red zone, which is where we don't want it, where we've got a failed road surface. Okay, and I want to read a little bit about somewhat of the background behind this from our perspective anyway. The replacement model considers the optimal balance of repair and maintenance typically required over time until replacement or reconstruction of the asset is required to avoid reaching a point of diminished return on investment. The model also serves to evaluate various MOP strategies and associate costs of each. So in our county, and it replicates the DOT there as well, the acronym for for MOP is Maintenance, Operations, and Preservation. We use an acronym that drives all of our decision making, that's MOPIA. Okay, so we've got 5 components that we deal with in my county: maintenance, operations, preservations, improvement, and administration. We believe very strongly that the first 3, maintenance and operations and preservation, is where our dollars go. And certainly you're going to have an administration component that we can't move too much. But the I, the capital projects, really is the leftover. You can back into our equation essentially and decide how much you're going to spend on improvements once you've taken care of your business everywhere else. That's somewhat unique to, I will say, the cities around us, for instance. Many times they're not in a position to be able to invest in those as I guess as clearly as what we consider that to be critical for us, but that is how we've got it structured on our end. So sticking with the modeling, we want to avoid unnecessary deferred maintenance and preservation costs. Now this has been talked about quite a bit today, but the impacts of a deferred maintenance and preservation program are felt and compounded over long term. And I was really encouraged to hear quite a bit of the discussion about trust and building a rapport and relationships with your elected officials. I will tell you that in my particular county, I respond to 7 elected council people and 1 elected executive. Okay, so there's 8 people that are elected. In my county, they are on 4-year terms. They max out at 8. So if they get reelected, any way you look at it, they're going to be termed out in 8 years. Okay. You know, most of these preservation models are looking at things much further down the road than that. So the challenge always is, how do I convince an elected official who wants a big bang when they get into office that it's imperative that we stick with the program and continue to invest in pavement and preservation when they want, as we saw up there in one of the slides, a whole bunch of ribbon cuttings. And my county is no different than anybody else's. We have worked hard with numbers and with providing detailed data to convince them that the road we're going down, pardon the pun, is the right road in terms of investing in our maintenance and operations and preservation. And so far, it's worked well. But I will tell you, the cost of maintenance and preservation is exponentially higher than the initial capital construction over the functional life of the pavement. So again, how do you convince an elected official that's going to be in office for maybe 4 years, don't worry about this new sexy 3-lane conversion for capacity or a new signal, we really need to continue to work on our preservation model when they may not be there to see that. So hugely problematic if it's not done properly. And this just reinforces that. I guess I should add, and I think it was mentioned earlier as well, when you're in front of a city council or a county council or whatever your elected body is, maybe it's county commissioners, many times the numbers that you have, although compelling and make a lot of sense to you, this gets back to the interpreter comment, I guess, is you've got to be able to still somehow be able to convey that message to an elected body that likely doesn't have the education you have, doesn't have the background, maybe not even the passion you have for the transportation network that you're trying to sell them. So you've got to figure out a way to put it in terms that will give you the end result you're looking for, and of course, hopefully take care of the infrastructure you're trying to preserve. So this is unique to Pierce County in the sense that this is data-driven from many years of working on our preservation system, and it's probably I guess it's going to be a little difficult for you to see it, but I'll walk you through it. And what I want you to understand here, this first slide, and I'm going to toggle between this one and the next one to make a few points. This is what you'll see in the middle underneath the years, what we're calling our unsustainable model, okay? So this is what we don't want to do in Pierce County. And what you'll see here is the typical pavement condition indexes running up the y-axis on the left, and you've got the years running down on the right. So you've got year 1 all the way up to year 30. So we've got a brand new road out there. It's sitting up in the green. We're just getting started, and we're going to do our typical stuff. So we're going to, as this road starts to age, we're going to do some crack filling. We're going to do some full depth grinds. And then at some point, which if you were to look at this curve, and again, a lot of it depends on the specific road. I'm going to show you a decision tree that's going to complicate this a little bit later, but understand that each of these roads could be slightly different. We've tried to pick something here, and this is an arterial. It's a little under 5,000 ADT. So we run out to about year 16 or 17. At that point in time, we chip seal it. And then look at what happens to the curve. It jumps right back up to the top. It's in new condition for talking purposes. And then we start to run ourselves back out again in the green zone, and we start doing our crack filling, and we start doing our full depth grind. But what you'll see, without belaboring this, is pretty soon it starts to condense itself in terms of the time. In fact, if you can read it in the upper right, even our cost per lane mile that we're infilling and crack sealing is actually going down. And the reason is, but we don't have enough time in between these cycles to be able to get out and do the amount of work that we typically do. And then what happens is, at some point you'll see at year 30, we've run it down where it's going to have to be reconstructed. Okay, that's not the model that we consider to be sustainable. And then down below in the middle, you'll see maintenance and repairs. What is that, about 52,000. We're looking at pavement preservation at about 67, 68. The reconstruction number was 190. So at the end of the day, we drove this road to failure in 30 years, and it cost us about $310,000 to be able to address that, okay? So here's our sustainable model. And look again, I'm gonna bounce back. I want you to pay attention to the first half of this. It looks the same. Unsustainable and sustainable looks the same. Again, in Pierce County, in the model that we're using. And we're gonna do the same type of stuff. We're going to crack seal, we're going to full depth grind, we're gonna go ahead and chip seal, and we're gonna bring that road back up to new condition, and then we're gonna start to transition back down. And the difference in this one, again, the take-home message here is, we get down on this particular one, again, this is an arterial under 5,000 ADT, at about year 21 or 22, it's gonna vary, but at that point in time, we're gonna do a HMA overlay for this road, okay? And we're gonna push that all the way back up, and then we're gonna just replicate this cycle without ever running it back down into the red. So the cost of doing that, in this particular example, we had maintenance and repairs at about 16,000, pavement preservation, a higher number simply because of the cost of an asphalt overlay, but that came in at about 109,000. So we got a total cost of 124, say $125,000. And in doing that, we kept that pavement up in the ranges where we wanted to see that. So again, just to reflect back, we're sitting at about 310,000 here. For our unsustainable model, our sustainable model, we're sitting at about 124, 125,000. Okay, so that's what we're seeing working for us in Pierce County. So how do we're going to have to plan for this, and in doing that, we've developed what we're going to call a decision tree. I'm going to show you a slide here in a minute. I know it's going to be horribly difficult to see, but I want to kind of walk you through one example of why we use that. And this gets back to what was said earlier. This helps us determine what to do, when to do it, and to which pavement segments to achieve lowest life cycle cost. Okay, we have to have something to help drive our decisions as we go through this. So the consideration factors on that, we need to understand the pavement category. Okay, am I dealing with an arterial, a collector? What am I dealing with? What kind of traffic volumes do I have on that road? Third item is percent of heavy truck traffic. Very concerning if we don't address the proper heavy truck traffic on the design that we're going to perform out there. And then lastly, what have we been doing for maintenance and operation over the years for that particular segment? Okay, so those are consideration factors. Once we have those, we plug it into this monster, and Without trying to read this, let me just tell you what we do is we're going to drop down through and we're going to take those consideration factors and we're going to identify where this particular road segment fits in here. So for instance, if you ran down the orange, the two grays, and you dove off to the left of your screen to the yellow box, that is a 2,000 to 5,000 ADT. Okay, so that gives me an idea what my volume is on that particular roadway. And then if I drop straight down just to pick one, on that particular one I'm at between 8 and 15% truck traffic. Okay, the one on the right, the one on the left is both different than that, but I'm just going to choose that one. At that point, as we've said many times here today, typically we'll get 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 years out of that new road, and then we're going to have to chip seal it. In this example, we're going to chip seal that road twice, likely to be about 10 years apart. And then at some point, probably 10 to 12 years out, we're going to end up overlaying that. And if you can see the line, then it jumps all the way back up. We've got a new road base and we go back into the chip seal mode. All right. So my folks use this to be able to decide what is the appropriate application for any given road segment they have. So we're still within the planning process. Now you have to decide, you know which roads are likely to benefit optimally from routine maintenance and repairs. You need to then put together a list of candidates that you're going to propose from a budget standpoint. We always try to come in with, as you'll see the number up there, about 110% of what we think our budget capacity is for a variety of reasons. There's political influences, there's maybe we're going to get some really aggressive bidding for our roads. We want to make sure that we're able to properly allocate all the funds that we've got available for preventative maintenance. So in our case, we've always been covered by coming in with about 10% more of the projects than we really think we have funding for. Item 2 is we want to field assess the list of candidates to produce a repair work order, okay? And the thing that's important here is the work order information is going to provide us with a clear understanding of pavement condition, the type, severity, and the extent of pavements. This is far and away more superior for us than just using the PCI tool all by itself. We've got to go out and get some boots on the ground and see what that road's looking like in order to really fully understand the implications of the work we're going to do to that road. And then we're going to take that list after having gone through our tree and having gone out and done the field assessments, and we're going to prioritize first order of work severity and extent of existing defects, logistic considerations, potential conflicts with planned construction activity, and then lastly, repair and pavement. Now, I will tell you in that third bullet, hugely important that you're thoughtful in your planning when you do these types of improvements. And the example I'll use for you is, and it's happened before, unfortunately, is to go out and have a newly paved road. Let's just, for talking purposes, say it happens to be a utility company that you have under franchise within your county road department. They go out and put up a new road, and unbeknownst to them or anybody that was actually coordinating that, a year later you're going to come back in and do some type of an improvement with one of your sister departments. Maybe it's a sewer utility extension, or maybe it's a surface water management extension. They blow out that brand new road. It doesn't matter to the public driving that who's responsible for why it happened or whose pot of money it came out of. At the end of the day, it looks like poor planning, and doesn't anybody talk to each other down there. Why in the world would you put a new road in and blow it up a year later? So we've got a GIS database utility coordination system that we employ to try to minimize those. We still have challenges. We still have no cut requirements on a new road, but there's always I guess, exceptions to the rule, but I would suggest to you that the best way to continue to build credibility is to make sure those types of things happen very few. Okay, now we're working towards our program development. We're going to have 3 different ways that we're going to fix these roads. And in our county, the larger roads, the over 12 ADT roads, will generally run those through our TIP, okay, our 6-year transportation improvement program, specifically our annual program. Those larger projects will pull right into that program along with our congestion projects, along with our safety projects, our non-motorized projects, and they'll compete with the limited funds that are there because those are typically something that we're going to have done by outside resources. That we'll actually do the design internally, but the contractors will come in and do that. Chip seal, on the other hand, we're very fortunate. We've got a great chip seal program, and you'll see those candidates will populate our annual chip seal program. It'll be performed by county staff. And then the third possibility is the CAPE and the slurry microsurface. Those we typically reserve for our smaller, lower local access roads, and we go out typically on a small works roster and put those out to bid and have, again, an external contractor come in and do that work for us. Again, that can happen however it needs to in your county. That just happens to work best for us. I know you can't read this. What I wanted, the message here is, this is acting as a dashboard for all of our road superintendents in the field. And again, without trying to read it, I'll just tell you, it's a snapshot of a particular area within our county. What you'll see on the right is fog seal and 2 different chip seals. And essentially what happens is when the roads are ready for, let's just say, some type of a chip seal, it's going to show green. When it's been completed, it's going to show black. Or did I get that reversed? Planned is green, black is complete, okay? And then on the left side of that, we're going to tally our road miles and all of our quantities with that, and this is real time. And so what I mean by that is our road soups, when they're sitting in their trucks at the end of the day, they're going to enter that data on all these roads we just talked about, and they're going to hit a button, and it's going to tell us, especially at different parts of the department where we're not familiar with the work that they're doing instantaneously, it's going to tell us where they are in terms of the progress of that program. Very, very helpful tool. Again, I know it's an eyeful right here, but it's been very helpful for us. This one, really what I wanted to show is on the left axis there on the top, this is pavement expenditures, and this is tied to preservation. You've got a trend line in the red, you've got actual in the blue. We had, like many of you, we went through some tough times during the economic downturn, and I think in 2007 we were probably paying maybe $24 for HMA, and I think clear out there in 2014 it almost doubled. Yet our folks were able to continue to invest in preservation to the point where, if you look at the chart below, one of the indicators is our pothole complaints. We take that, we're pretty proactive in that, and I'm encouraged to see this is just one other way to measure if you're being successful and where you're spending your money. But what you'll see there is we've been able to drive, the trend line is down, drive those potholes down, when in fact we've still been faced with costs that are going up pretty dramatically during that time period. And last slide here, what you've got, this gets back to the performance monitoring I mentioned to you. How do you know if what you're doing is working? This is another way that we take a look at our system. This is percentage of pavement segments in good, fair, and poor condition. Okay, and what you've got on the left is our arterials, and what you've got on the right is our local access. You'll see the percentage where we're at. You're never going to be in a situation where we're going to be able to keep them all in pristine condition, but you do have to have a process to keep them within reason within these areas. And I would argue our arterials look pretty good. We're a little disappointed in our local access, and the story behind that is when things got lean and we had to pull dollars from other areas, we divested a little bit in our local program. We've since turned that around the last couple of years. I'm going to expect the trend to start to go down in that, but truthfully that's what happened. We had to invest in our more traveled roadways in order to satisfy the needs that were out there with the limited resources that we had. And that's a picture of Mount Rainier and one of the roads we have there, and with that I'll wrap it up. Thank you, everyone.
Questions for Brian?
Hi, Brian. Enjoyed your presentation. Thanks for coming to the conference. I wanted to know if NACE, the National Association of County Engineers, has any best practices manuals for pavement management or pavement preservation available for your counterparts across the country. You know, the county systems are really so large, you can't just do it by seat of the pants driving the system. You really need a computerized pavement management system to do it. So are there best practices manuals?
There's nothing current in that regard. What I would suggest to you is the best thing we have going from a resource is the members that put in the time for NACE. Those are the types of inputs that we could take back to the association and find out if that's something that we're willing to put the resources towards, but I get where you're going on that. What we typically do is use our networking component at that point, and I'll look over and I'll say, I've got a county engineer, Richie, that you've got a really good, robust program. Would you share what you have with your neighboring county? And a lot of times that's how it works for us.
You know, what I've seen over the years is we've developed now a lot more emphasis on pavement preservation and taking good care of what we've already built, which is a goal we have to have for America, and the county road system is essential to that. But we're not doing a great job of it, and so to me, you know, these best practices sorts of things and manuals and even a checklist for requirements, you know, that's sort of a management tool that we really need. A lot of the issues we have it's a failure of management. It's not a failure of the technology that we can employ and do employ, but we need to manage our system better. So I encourage you to do that.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and in fact, our asset management program within our county does that very thing. But as a national association, we just haven't pulled that together. But thank you for that.
Brian, I like your presentation very much, but you mentioned that you always do some safety projects also. Could you mention a few examples of the kind of things that you do?
So I will tell you, well, first of all, EIDC, excuse me, that's a committee I'm on. Everyday Counts has provided us with some safety improvements that have worked well for us. The Safety Edge, for instance, is some of the things that we're doing in all of our projects. I would tell you, we take it a step further in our county and our state is we've got specific safety projects that we're going out and looking for, and those are data driven. So for instance, if we've got lots of accidents in a particular intersection, we're going to look for why that is. We're going to compete for federal or state dollars, or we'll take county dollars to go out and fix that. We've identified a benchmark that we see as a minimum amount of safety dollars we should invest in any given year in our program. And we're out there trying to do that at all times. One of the other ones I'd mentioned to some of the other engineers here that's becoming hugely concerning for us is all of our projects, even something as simple as our overlay project that we're doing every year, has a ripple effect with the ADA implications that are going on right now. So what you'll find in terms of safety projects, again, is now I'm faced with going out and doing lots of work on existing sidewalks and ramps and curbs because they don't meet today's standards, which is pulling lots of dollars away from other things we could do, certainly, but that's another type of safety improvement that we're doing out there. Yeah.
Brian, I'd be remiss if I sat here and you did a great job, but from the standpoint of the NACE Pavement Preservation Committee, there is going to be a conversation on what you were asking on Friday. Mr. Todd Kinney, our chairman of the committee, is going to present that. But we have done a number of presentations to our members about what best practices are being used, what programs are being used, things of that nature. And I think Todd will talk a little bit about it, but we're also trying not to reinvent the wheel, and we're trying to use the National Center's resources and FHWA's resources along with ISA and try to bring that as more of a pushing that information out more like a clearinghouse. So there will be some discussion about that later in the conference.
And that's on Friday, Richie? Richie, a past president of NACE as well. That's a really progressive group working, so that would, I'm going to assume you'll take the message as well that there is some interest in us providing a product potentially there. So good, thanks.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not actually. I'm taking off tomorrow. Okay. Any other questions for Brian? Yes, sir.
Sorry, on your slide that showed HMA overlay or inlay and when you do chip seal and where you do micro, I apologize if this is too specific a question, but have you looked at cold in place recycling at all?
I'm going to say my road operations people have. I don't have the data. I don't know what drove us in one particular direction. I wished I had Bruce Wagner here to answer that question, but they have turned over all the rocks, so to speak, and this happens to work best for us. If you want to either email me or call, I'll get that information for you. I don't have it on me, though. Okay.
Thank you, Brian.